All right, welcome into Sports Bit. Betting Insight today. Paulie and Teddy, big game breakdown, deep dive coming up, more upsets in college basketball. We always start with a fresh take, and welcome to March, by the way. I'm willing to bet if you go to Las Vegas in several sports books, you'll hear people say, oh, it's senior night. They're going to be up for this game. You're going to get a huge effort. Teddy, you don't think that's the case?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of hype about senior night. And certainly for your mainstream fan, you're going to hear a lot about senior night. From a betting perspective, there's nothing to it. I mean, there really is nothing to it. Look at tonight. Look at last night as a classic example. All right. Iowa State, senior night. Oh, they're supposed to blow out Oklahoma State. What happens? They get a big lead. They get flat. They put up a bunch of bad shots. They escape with the win. They never sniff a point spread cover, really, in that contest. North Carolina, Roy Williams started two senior walk-ons, Justin Coleman and Spencer Dalton. Those guys in the North Carolina starting lineup. No surprise then last night that the Tar Heels, they didn't get the money. They never really sniffed the money, you know. And it's traditionally a different type of night for North Carolina, with many of the key cogs on the bench rooting for the walk-ons instead of the other way around. Roy Williams does that sort of thing. How about Texas? How'd their senior night work out? Not so hot against Kansas. And again, last night's results are not, you don't want to just take a snapshot and say, oh, well, look, senior night means nothing. But when you go through, Paul, all the hype about senior night, and you just look, this team's last home game, that team's last home game, and go on and on across the line, down conferences and the works, you know what you find? You know what senior night's worth against the point spread? Absolutely nothing. And frankly, there are times where it's a legitimate distraction. You have guys, there's a lot of emotion with senior night. You go on a run, you have a pregame ceremony, next thing you know, there's 10 minutes left in the second half and you're gassed. The Iowa State story last night. It happens on a fairly consistent basis. Don't buy into any of that senior night hype crap when it comes to point spread results.
Time for bad beats and wrong sides. Bad beats? Thank God, nothing for the players. But we have something from the sports book here, as the Utah-Boston line landed 5, so 4.5, 5.5. The books took one of the shorts here.
Yeah, it's nice to call a bad beat for the books instead of for the bettors. Here's one. The Celtics Jazz, it bounced all day between 4.5 and 5.5. And then, of course, last night it lands right on 5. Boston hits one of 2 free throws at the end to get right on the number. So what's that a bad beat for? Not for bettors. All bettors are supposed to either win or push that game. For the books, however, that result was a legitimate bad beat. They did not want Boston, Utah landing right on 5.
As you said yesterday, if I'm playing, I'm laying. Definitely Texas, a bad bet, wrong side. Blown out in that one. Kansas all over Texas.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that game was 15-0. The first time I clicked it on was 15-0. The ball game was over by the 14-minute mark of the first half. I mean, it was over. It was garbage time thereafter. Texas didn't have it in them. And Kansas, with that red-hot start, that team's hot, Paulie. We'll talk about Kansas a little bit more when it comes to the deep dive, talking about potential NCAA champions in our final segment today.
Yep. Also, wrong sides. The Rockets bet up from 1.5 to 3.5. They get blown out against, they lose to the Bucks. And if you also bet the under, 5-1 since the break to the over, and 4 of those have been a total of 214 or higher.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know who's betting the Rockets under. They're a really hard team to bet under the total right now. And if you have, for any reason, been thinking about Houston under the total, man, tonight's game again shows why the Rockets under. Not a bet I'm looking to make. We're not talking about a team that's playing a whole lot of defense. And, of course, Houston got bet up, -1.5 to -3.5 last night. Of course, they didn't win. They didn't cover. Lots of Houston money. Number one, Milwaukee's getting better. Number two, you have to wonder if this Rockets team might genuinely prefer to lose and not even make the playoffs instead of winning games and getting swept by Golden State in the first round. We've talked about the character of that Houston team. It's not good. We've talked about that locker room. It's not good. Teams like that, when you talk about, dig deep to make the playoffs, I wouldn't count on it.
Yeah, very good point there. You go better off in the lottery, try to get a top three pick, and who knows, maybe you get lucky. Congratulations here in Las Vegas to a lucky bettor. Last night, somebody won $305,000. The parlay progressive at William Hill, 15 for 15. He was 14-0 going into the game last night. He needed Kansas. All you have to do is pick the winners. No point spread involved. $5 bet returned $305,000. Teddy, he had a 3.5-point middle. If that was you, what would you have done as far as a hedge that you could have walked into 300 grand?
Well, let's talk about the concept here, okay? Because we need to explain to people exactly what the contest is. This is like a parlay card.
Yes.
And you have to win 15 games
Just pick
in
winners.
order to cash this progressive jackpot.
Just got to pick the winners. You got it.
Right. But this was going on all weekend. It's been going on for weeks. I don't understand how we had 15 games on a Monday night.
They pick the games. It goes on all year. If nobody wins, they started at 30,000. If nobody wins, it carries over, and it goes up, 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 and up. So they put out the 15 games on the card, and then you just pick a winner, and it went through all weekend.
And how long has that progressive been building up? If it started at 30 grand, it's
long
up to
time.
300.
Yeah, it goes back to football. Late in the foot or midway through the football season.
Exactly,
Yep.
Which tells us how hard these things are to win. That being said, if you're in that situation where, guess what? You got a 300 grand payday coming if you can cash this one game and you have a 3.5-point middle, boy, you have to put something on Texas in that spot. Even if you hated Texas in the game, you got to put something on the Longhorns so you don't win 14 games in a row and walk away with nothing. Now, the question, of course, is how to do it. Now, in general, I wasn't a big Texas fan today. We talked about it on yesterday's show. And again, I said, if I'm playing, I'm laying with Kansas. And Kansas, of course, took a ton of money in that ball game. But the concept of you want to hedge something and make sure you get something back, on the money line, you could have gotten the Longhorns in the plus 140/plus 150 range. And then the question is, how much of that do you want to risk?
How hard is it, do you think, for a $5 bet? Well, it's a $5 bet, but how hard do you think it is for someone to get 30,000, get their hands on 50,000 cash in less than 18 hours?
It's really hard. Unless you have deep-pocketed friends, unless you're working with a sportsbook director who knows you and is willing to extend you some options, unless you go to a payday loan place, dollar loan center, but to get your hands on 30 grand, 50 grand, 100 grand to hedge, not an easy thing to do. And even if you have friends, that are like, oh yeah, I'll help you out. How many friends are you going to give 50K to, Paul? Even if you know they're getting paid the next day. Not a lot.
Guy's on the next flight out when he cashes the ticket.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, it's obviously he's in a tough spot. And in that situation, you need to raise as much capital as you can and hedge off as much as you can. But in this, again, do you really want to split it 50-50? That it doesn't make a difference if Texas wins or Kansas wins? That's what the bettor has to decide. But in a situation like this, he probably can't decide that. How much cash he can actually raise out of his pocket is going to determine how much he's going to be able to hedge.
Maybe a perfect situation for in-game. Let me see how this plays out, and then I'll get creative. But can I get down for 20 or 30,000 at a local Las Vegas casino?
And generally, the answer to that is no. But in-game wagers, you can get down a number of different bets. It's not like you're going to put 20 grand on one bet in-game. You might be able to, or 30 grand or 50 grand. It doesn't happen. And especially not someone who hasn't, it's not going to happen for someone that hasn't been betting at that level already. But if you're talking about the possibility of going in as the game is progressing, that's the best strategy. The best strategy is not to do it pre-tip. The best strategy is to be able to hedge as much or as little as you want as the game progresses. But of course, that means you have to have that money already in an account and ready to bet before tip-off, which again is not something necessarily that's easy to do for your average $5 bettor.
Well, congrats to that bettor. That's a nice payday.
Oh yeah, it is.
Yeah,
300K. Did you make 300K today?
No, I did not. Did you make
300K yesterday?
No, I did not.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, right. Big game
Cheers.
breakdown coming up next. We'll go rapid fire, and we'll start with the Warriors on SportsBit. Betting Insight today. All right, time for big game breakdown. Let's start in the association. No line on the Hawks and the Warriors as Curry is questionable. The Warriors just had the sixth straight on the road. They return home. 1-4 ATS, double digits in 2016. And will Kerr back off? Does Curry sit this one out? In the first meeting, Golden State won 102-92 in Atlanta. Teddy, what do you think here with what Kerr decides to do? And who knows what's going to go on with Curry tonight?
Yeah, I would not be surprised to see Steph Curry sit out tonight's game. It's that type of a spot for Golden State. Successful road trip, return home, give your superstar a chance to have a couple of days off before getting on the floor. And of course, it's a Hawks team that they just beat by double digits, as you mentioned last week. They face the Thunder again on Thursday. It's kind of a little bit of a flat spot here for the Warriors, and I would not be shocked to see Curry sit out this evening. That being said, you got to make a case for Atlanta if you don't want Golden State, and you need to be in action on this game. And look, the Hawks won the first meeting last year. They lost the last two meetings against Golden State by double-digit margins. How about this stat? The Hawks are 0 for the entire season catching +5 or higher. 0 for the year. They have not stepped up in class even close to the way they did in 2014/2015. Remember, through 60 games last year, the Hawks were 48-12. They just clinched a playoff spot, and they were on their way to the number 1 seed. This year, from 48-12, this year they're 33-27. 15 games worse. The current number 5 seed. Look, Kyle Korver's not the difference maker that he was last year. You got the impending free agency for Al Horford. You got Jeff Teague, who spent, felt like months on the trading block. The chemistry's not there. This team has 2 wins since the break, and both came against teams in horrible spots. They beat Charlotte and Chicago, and it was a bad spot for both of those teams. So even though I don't want Golden State in this game, I'm not so sure I want Atlanta either.
Yeah, all excellent points there. To college hoops, a big one. I love Buddy Hield. Oklahoma at home against Baylor. Oklahoma 7.5, total of 151. The first meeting in Waco, the Sooners won 82-72. It came down to offensive execution. Baylor, 9 more field goal attempts, 5 more free throws, and beat Oklahoma by 13 on the boards. Still lost by double digits. Why? Because Oklahoma was on fire, 16-28 from 3, 31-50 on field goals, and 29 assists on 31 made shots, Teddy.
Yeah, that's arguably the best offensive game any team's played all year. And now you have Oklahoma. The number looks pretty reasonable. 7.5, 151. You say if they play at that level offensively, they should win this one pretty comfortably. But we've talked about Baylor a little bit in the last couple of weeks. That the Bears have one legitimate weakness, and this is a major red flag when you're facing Oklahoma. The Bears are dead last in the Big 12 in three-point defense. They allow nearly 41% shooting from beyond the arc. That's not necessarily a great matchup for Oklahoma, and maybe that's why the Sooners did hit 16-28 from beyond the arc in the first meeting. But again, when Baylor has more field goal attempts, more free throw attempts, more rebounds in the first meeting and loses because Oklahoma shoots lights out, that's not always easy to happen twice in a row. The Bears have won 3 of their last 4. They have road wins at Texas and TCU during that span. Only loss coming in a competitive game against Kansas. If the Bears can step up their perimeter defense, they get a shot on here. But if not, Buddy Hield and the Sooners will be celebrating again, just like they did after the first meeting.
All right, senior night in this one. Iowa at home against Indiana. Iowa 4-153. Teddy will tell you about this unique senior class with Iowa in a second. Well, Iowa's playing bad basketball. 1-4 straight up, 0-5 ATS. This streak started with the loss at Indiana on the road. During that run, they've lost to the spread by 54 points. In that loss, Indiana 28-0 in bench points. But wait a second. Before you say Iowa's playing lousy basketball, I'm going to get on Indiana here and grab the points. Indiana 16-0 at home, but 7-6 road neutral. And the wins on the road, Rutgers, Nebraska, Minnesota, St. John's, Illinois, awful teams, Teddy.
Yeah, but that being said, they did have a win at Michigan. They did have a win against Notre Dame on a neutral floor. Although, even both those wins, I mean, the game against Notre Dame, man, they were hitting that day. The win against Michigan, we've talked a lot. And at that point, that might have been the low point for Michigan when it came to actually being able to step up in class against a team that has a strong low post game. Indiana, we talk about their perimeter shooting, but the reality is they do have an inside-outside game. The Wolverines really struggle against their size. But we got to look at this graph right here because you don't see a lot of senior classes like this one in the modern college basketball era. Look at this. Woodbury, 132 starts. Giselle, 125. Clemens, 53. Udoff, 62. Between them, you're talking about close to 500 games of collegiate experience. This has been a senior class that has been very, very special. I wouldn't be surprised they close out their special careers with a solid win on their home floor.
Coming up next, the deep dive and topic of the day. We'll make the case 16, 18, hell, 20 teams can win the college basketball tournament and play of the day. That's coming up on SportsBit. Betting Insight today. All right, back on SportsBit, Betting Insight today. Wake up with Paulie and Teddy. Time for the deep dive and the topic of the day. Over the weekend, Xavier and Iowa both lost. That means 73 top 10 teams have a loss this season, and we still have a week left. Some teams still have 2 games left on the regular season. That is a record. The 73 losses a record in the AP poll era. Teddy, you really think 16, 18, 20 teams could win the title?
I really do. I mean, this is the most wide open tournament in recent memory, Paulie. And the numbers show us that already. When you say 73 top 10 teams have lost in straight up fashion, which has never happened before, we still have a week to go in the regular season. So it says there's more parity. There also says nobody's elite. There's not a single team that you can say, wow, I would be shocked. I would be absolutely shocked if they didn't make it through the first weekend. If they got upset in the second round and didn't reach the Sweet 16. Even the number 1 seeds, you say, yeah, some of these teams are vulnerable. That being said, when the top seeds are vulnerable, it means that there are a lot of teams. Yeah, I believe 16, 18, maybe even 20 teams are good enough this year to win a title. And most years, we're talking about 4, 6, 8, maybe 10. This year, we got twice that number.
Yeah, in order. If you look at this graph, these are all the teams that have been ranked number 1 on the season. Carolina, Kentucky, Michigan State, Kansas, Oklahoma, Villanova, and Kansas. Teams that weren't in the preseason top 10, the first poll. Michigan State, Nova, Xavier, Miami, Oregon, and West Virginia. And right now, Oregon's a hot team. Nobody had that before the season. They're on a roll in the Pac-12.
Yeah, and don't leave Miami, Florida out the discussion. So you have 6 teams that are in the top 10 now that were not in the top 10 in the preseason. Of the teams that have been ranked number 1 this year, and let's go back to that graph again one more time real quick. Again, you have half a dozen teams. Kansas has been number 1 twice. They were number 1 earlier in the season. They're currently number 1 again. But when there's 6 teams at the top that have been rotating through, you have another 6 teams that weren't in the preseason top 10. They're in the preseason top 10 now. There's a dozen, and there's not one team out of all of them you say they have no chance. They don't have the inside game, they don't have the outside game, they don't have the guard play, they don't have the pedigree. They all have the pedigree, Paul. But really, when we start to look at the long-term numbers, who actually wins titles. Look, 21 of the last 26 champs have been number 1 or number 2 seeds. And then 4 of the other 5 were number 3 seeds. So the only legitimate long shot to win a title in the last 26 years, dating back to 1990, that's UConn in 2014 when they were number 7 seed. And you remember that team, they're supposed to lose in the first round to St. Joe's. They were on the ropes. Round 1 to St. Joe's. They got lucky to win that game in overtime. And oh, by the way, they got to face a number 8 seed in the title game. The long shots don't win titles, but this year, Maybe they do. Maybe there's somebody out there that is offering an attractive payday that isn't even on this list. I mean, you look at the teams that we've listed. We haven't talked about Virginia. They haven't been a number one team this year. We got to talk about West Virginia. Oh, they're on the list. Indiana, Maryland, Purdue, Utah, Arizona. Cal's red hot right now. Kentucky was number one for a couple of days. I mean, I wouldn't count them out. There's a lot of teams to consider on this list. Duke, what about the Blue Devils? They're not even on this list of the two graphs that we showed. So, there's more than one team out there, more than 10 teams out there this year, Paul, that are very, very live.
Well, I think experience is big, and I think playing in these big games and having tournament experience. I mean, you're going to throw Wichita State out? Look at their record with Van Vliet. This is a team that went to a Final Four. This is a program that was a 1 seed and undefeated. I wouldn't want to face that team. They could have a run in them. We saw VCU make a Final Four run.
We're not talking about a Final Four run. We're talking about winning a title. Name me the last mid-major to win a title.
Well, Butler got the back-to-back title games. They're in possession. It came down to one shot.
Did they cash anybody's future tickets? Butler didn't cash one, except for to get out of the region. They didn't cash any win the title tickets. They got there, but they didn't win it. Can you think of any mid-majors that have won?
Boy.
Memphis had one in their hands when they were still in CUSA.
Well, are we calling UNLV one? They were in a lousy conference.
But that's the last one, is UNLV. It's been 25 years. It doesn't happen. Wichita State's not getting there. Gonzaga's not getting there. It just doesn't happen for the mid-majors when it comes to winning a title.
What do you think of Villanova? Try to exercise the demons. I mean, this is a team that hasn't been to the second weekend since 2009. Twice they've lost as 1 seeds early, and they went out as a 2 seed as well.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Jay Wright is, Joey chokes a lot. That being said, this might be the best Nova team that he's had. They feel different to me. It feels like this team is much liver than other Nova teams in recent years. So, yeah, I'm not going to sell that team short. Not even a little bit. Nova's absolutely liver. Is that a word? Liver this year than they've been in any recent season.
More live. Yeah, either one. That's fine. Yeah, and, well, we go back to Carolina, too, with all that talent, and Kansas. I mean, I certainly want to face Kansas, and what they did against Texas, that's a dangerous team as well. But you mentioned the choke job. Bill Self has a ton of early losses in the tournament with a 1 or a 2 seed.
He also got a title, as does Roy Williams. And would you be shocked to see Kansas playing North Carolina in the championship game? I wouldn't.
No, but I wouldn't be shocked if Kansas lost early either.
Yeah, that's the beauty of this year's tournament, is that it's going to be like that. I can't wait for the matchups. I cannot wait for the brackets to come out a week from Sunday.
All right, we had a winner yesterday with the Nets. They got there, lost by 10 to the Clippers. It's money time. Play of the day. What are we going to do here, Teddy?
Let's go right back to the Nets, man. I'm telling you, this team is the gift that keeps on giving right now. Notice the fact that the LA Lakers are favored tomorrow, and that should be enough to say, oh, okay, I'll take Brooklyn. Brook Lopez off a double-double, 25 and 10. He's averaged about 24 points a game since the All-Star break. Worth noting, the Nets starters outscored and out-rebounded the Clippers starters last night. They just couldn't overcome Jamal Crawford's 26 points off the bench. And when LA stepped up their defense in the fourth quarter, the Nets offense kind of shut down. Good thing here, they're facing a team that doesn't have any defense and doesn't know how to step up their defense in the fourth quarter. Bottom line, twofold. 1, Lakers can't be laying. 2, Nets are worth riding right now. Let's take Brooklyn plus 1.5 for the play of the day for Tuesday.
We like it. Nice work, Teddy. Wake up early with Paulie and Teddy on SportsBit. Betting Insight today. We'll see you Wednesday.